Every spring, my grandmother Verna put up eggs in a 5-gallon stoneware crock. And every spring, that crock went into a hole in the ground. Not the cellar, the ground. She'd have one of us dig it out and set the crock down in it with the rim just above the dirt. And there it sat, until the hens quit laying in December. 50 years of hens. 50 years of the same crock. I was maybe 7 the first time I asked her why it had to go in the hole. She said the ground stays cold. That was the whole answer. Verna was born in 1911, about 11 miles from the Current River in Carter County, Missouri. There was no electric line to that house until she was past 40. The nearest thing to refrigeration she had was gravity and dirt. And she had one rule for pie crust. 6 words. She said them to me a few hundred times between the time I could see over the counter and the time she died, and she never once explained them. Don't let the lard get soft. I'm 63. I have a refrigerator with a temperature readout on the door. I still follow the rule, and not because I'm sentimental about her, because it's correct, and because almost everybody who repeats a rule like that gets the reason wrong. She did too. Understand first where a woman in that country got cold from, because it explains the crock, and it explains the rule. Dig down a few feet in southern Missouri, and the daily swing in temperature flattens out. Go deeper, and it settles close to the yearly average air temperature for that spot, which in Carter County runs right around 57 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the whole physics of the buried crock. It isn't cold like a refrigerator. It's cold like a number that never moves. Same reason the springs down there run the way they do. Big Spring, 4 miles south of Van Buren in our county, puts out about 276 million gallons a day, and the water comes out at 58 degrees in January and 58 degrees in August. It's the biggest spring in the state. That water isn't chilled by anything. It's just been underground long enough to forget the season. So Verna had 2 sources of cold, and both of them were the same number, the dirt and the water. She built her entire food year on that. Now the crust. Pie dough is flour, fat, water. Nothing else separates a good one from a bad one at the ingredient level, which is what makes people crazy about it. 2 cooks buy the same flour and the same lard and end up with 2 different objects. What separates them is where the fat is sitting when the dough goes in the oven. If the fat stays solid, it doesn't blend into the flour. It stays as flat shards pressed between damp layers of flour paste, stacked. That structure has a name. It's called lamination, which just means thin alternating layers of fat and dough sitting on top of each other. Then the heat hits it, and 2 things happen at almost the same second. The fat melts sideways into the flour touching it, and the water in the dough hits 212 degrees and turns to steam. And steam takes up roughly 1,600 times the room that the same water took up as a liquid. That expansion has to go somewhere. It goes up. It shoves the flour layers apart and leaves a gap behind. That gap is the flake. There's nothing else in there. A flake is a pocket where steam used to be. Run the failure and you get the other crust. Say the fat went soft before it went in. The fat is now spread evenly through the flour instead of sitting in sheets. There's nothing to push apart. The steam leaks out through 100 small holes and lifts nothing. You get dense and sandy. Not inedible, just flat, in every sense of the word. There's a second thing the fat does while it sits there, and it explains a word you've been saying your whole life without knowing it was a technical term. Gluten is the protein web that forms when wheat flour meets water and gets worked. In bread, you build it on purpose. In pie crust, it's what makes the difference between tender and leathery. Fat blocks it. Fat coats the flour proteins and physically stops them from linking into long chains. It makes the strands shorter. That is where the word shortening comes from. It isn't a brand, it's a description of the job. Lard is a shortening. Butter is a shortening. Tallow is a shortening. The can on the shelf is a shortening because it does that work, not because it owns the word. Verna's bowl never looked mixed. That confused me for years. It looked like she'd quit in the middle. The fat in a good pie dough is not uniform, and it isn't supposed to be. You want a range sitting in the same bowl. Some pieces about the size of a pea, some smashed flatter and wider than that, and a fair amount broken down to coarse crumb. Each size is doing a different job. The big flat pieces make the visible flakes, the ones that come apart when you break the edge. The fine crumb coats the flour and does the tenderizing. A dough with only one size gives you only one of those two things. She never owned a pastry blender. Two table knives held in one hand, cutting past each other through the bowl, or a dinner fork, or her fingertips, moving quick, pinching each piece flat once and turning it loose. Never her palm. There's a third method that solves a specific problem, and it's worth knowing even though she never used it. It's called fraisage, a French technique where you take the finished dough, a portion at a time, and smear each one forward across the counter with the heel of your hand. One pass, then gather it back. That smear stretches the fat pieces into long sheets instead of leaving them as chunks. You get a sturdier, more even crust that's less likely to blow out at a seam. It's the standard move for a tart shell that has to hold something wet. Go too fine and you get a crumbly, cookie-textured shell. Go too coarse and the dough leaks fat in the oven and cracks at the rim. The reason she could leave pieces that big without the whole thing coming apart under the rolling pin comes down to the next thing she measured with her eyes, and never with a cup. The water went in a spoonful at a time, and she never used all of what she'd poured out. The classic proportion for pie dough is 3 parts flour, 2 parts fat, 1 part water, by weight. 300 grams of flour, 200 of lard, 100 of water. Learn that and you don't need a recipe again. But that one is a ceiling, not a target. Flour takes up water differently depending on its protein content and on how humid the room is that day. On a wet August afternoon in the Ozarks, you might need a fifth less water than the number says. On a dry January morning, more. That's why the recipe your mother wrote out doesn't work at your house. It worked at hers. Ice water isn't superstition, and it has nothing to do with flavor. It does 2 jobs. It doesn't soften the fat pieces you just spent 5 minutes protecting, and cold slows gluten from forming. So the same amount of stirring builds less of that protein web. Verna's water came out of the ground at 58 degrees, and she thought nothing of it. She had cold running water before anyone in that hollow had a tap. The stopping point is physical, not visual. Squeeze a handful. If it holds together under pressure and still looks shaggy and unfinished in the bowl, stop. A dough that already looks smooth in the bowl has too much water in it, and you'll find that out in 40 minutes. A lot of the old cooks added a splash of cider vinegar. Acid does slow gluten development some, though the effect is more modest than the stories about it suggest. Too much water means more gluten, which means a crust that shrinks down the pan and eats like a boot. Too little and it cracks when you roll it. You can get the fat right and the water right and still ruin the whole thing in 90 seconds with the one tool you can't put in the freezer. Quick thing, then straight back to it. Your resource, 1-page card with the ratio, the temperatures, the rest times, is in the description, free, no email. Take it or don't. I won't bring it up again. Your hands run at 98.6 degrees. Lard melts at around 97. Butter has no single melting point because it's a blend of fats, but it starts giving around 68 and it's liquid by about 95. Sit with those numbers a second. You are hotter than the thing you're trying to keep solid. Every one of them. The hottest tool in that kitchen is you. That's why the old method is fingertips and not palms. Less surface area, less blood flow near the skin. It's why Verna ran her wrists under the pump before she started, which I took for a habit until I understood the mechanism behind it. And it's why the right answer to dough that suddenly feels greasy is not to work faster. It's to put the bowl in the cold and walk away for 10 minutes. Then the rest, which is the step nearly everybody skips. 30 minutes cold is the floor. 2 hours is better. Overnight is better than that. 2 separate things happen during that rest, and only one of them is about temperature. The fat firms back up, which is obvious. But the gluten you did build, however little of it, relaxes. Worked gluten acts like a stretched rubber band. It wants to pull back. Dough that hasn't rested fights the rolling pin, springs back a 1/4 inch every time you lift the pin, and then contracts again in the oven heat. That contraction is why your crust slumps down the sides of the pan, and your filling runs over the edge. It isn't the pan, it isn't the oven. It's a dough you rolled 20 minutes too early. All of this assumes the fat in your bowl behaves the way the fat in Verna's bowl behaved. For most of the last 100 years, in most American kitchens, it has not. Leaf lard is the fat from around a hog's kidneys, softest and most neutral fat on the animal, almost none of the pork flavor people brace for. And for most of American history, it was what you made pie with. There was a structural reason, and there was an economic one. Structurally, lard forms bigger fat crystals than butter does, and it melts a little higher, right around 97 degrees against butter's 95. Bigger crystals mean bigger sheets, which means bigger flakes. The higher melting point buys you a wider window before everything goes soft. Lard forgives a warm kitchen and a slow cook in a way butter never will. Economically, it was free. It was a byproduct. On a farm in that county, hogs got killed in November, once the weather turned cold enough to handle a carcass safely, and the fat got rendered because throwing it out was not a thought anybody had. Verna's pie fat came off an animal she'd fed. Then, in 1911, Procter & Gamble put Crisco on the market. First mass-market hydrogenated vegetable shortening in the country. Hydrogenation means forcing hydrogen into a liquid vegetable oil to make it solid at room temperature, a process the German chemist Wilhelm Normann patented in 1902. They gave a recipe book away with it. That's the year my grandmother was born. Within one generation, lard went from being the default to being the thing the neighbors thought was old-fashioned. Here's why it won, and it isn't marketing. Vegetable shortening melts around 117 degrees. It does not care about your warm hands or a July kitchen. It made the rule optional. One more date, because what's on the shelf now is not the same molecule. In 2015, the FDA determined that partially hydrogenated oils were no longer generally recognized as safe, and manufacturers reformulated. So the honest comparison. Butter gives the best flavor and the narrowest window. Lard gives the best structure and a wider window. Modern shortening gives you forgiveness and almost no flavor, which is exactly why so many of the old recipes split it, part lard and part butter, and take both. Whichever one is in your bowl, the rule ends where it ended in Verna's kitchen, at the oven door. The dough ought to be stiff enough to resist your thumb when it goes in. Rolling warms it back up. Every pass of the pin puts heat and pressure into it, and by the time you've fitted it to the pan and crimped the edge, you've undone a good part of the rest you just gave it. So the shaped crust goes back in the cold for 20 or 30 minutes, in the pan, before it sees any heat at all. Freezer works, and faster. Then the oven has to be genuinely hot, 400 to 425 for the opening stretch. This is not a preference. In a hot oven, the outside sets fast, which means the fat melts and flashes to steam, while the structure around it is already firming. In a cool oven, the fat has time to simply run out of the layers and pool in the pan before anything sets. That's your greasy pan and your pale, flat crust. And it's an oven problem wearing the costume of a recipe problem. Wet fillings are their own category. Blind baking means baking the empty shell first, before any filling goes near it, weighted down with dried beans or rice or metal weights so the sides don't slump and the bottom doesn't dome up. That's the fix for a soggy bottom under custard and cream. There isn't another one. Look at the whole sequence at once, and you'll see it isn't a list of steps. Cold fat, cold water, cold hands, cold rest, cold pan, hot oven. It's one chain, and a chain fails wherever it's thinnest. Break it anywhere, and you don't get to repair it downstream. A warm dough in a hot oven doesn't fail loudly. It fails quietly. An inch shorter, a shade paler, and dense in a way you can taste but can't name. Here's what Verna never said, because she never had to know it to be right. The rule was never about cold. Cold was the only tool she had. What she was actually protecting was separation. Fat and flour holding different physical ground until the oven takes over. Cold is how you enforce that in a house with no electric line. It isn't the goal, it's the method. And I didn't see it until I thought about the crock. That lime water she put the eggs in works by chemistry, not by chill. Calcium hydroxide in solution reacts and lays down calcium carbonate across the shell, which seals the thousands of pores in it, and the high alkalinity makes the whole crock hostile to bacteria. The shell already had a barrier on it, the bloom, and the lime reinforced it. Eggs keep 8 to 12 months that way, with no refrigeration at all. Both of her signature skills were the same idea. Keep two things from mixing. Hold the barrier. She buried eggs to keep the world out of them, and she kept lard cold to keep it out of the flour. And as far as I know, it never once occurred to her that those were the same sentence. Rules like this one don't survive because somebody wrote them down. Almost none of them were. They survive because one person stood next to another person at a counter and said 6 words a few hundred times until they took. That's the whole mechanism. It's fragile past believing, and it has worked about as long as there have been kitchens. In the mid-1930s, 9 out of 10 rural homes in this country had no electricity. Our co-op got organized in May of 1938, and the man who served as its first president farmed at Elsinore, 1 county road over. The line still took years to reach the Hollows. Verna got her power somewhere in there and kept following the rule anyway, because the rule was never about the appliance. She kept burying that crock too, long after she had a refrigerator she could have set it in. She handed the whole thing to me in a kitchen that has a freezer, a thermometer, and no excuse. Nobody in that chain ever used the word lamination. The rule outran the explanation by 3 generations. So here's the one thing to do tonight, with what's already in your house. Don't make dough. Cut your fat into half-inch pieces, whatever fat you've got, put them on a saucer, and set the saucer in the freezer. Put your mixing bowl in there next to it. Tomorrow, make the exact crust you always make. Same recipe, same amounts, same everything. Change one thing. The fat comes out of the freezer, instead of the refrigerator door, into a cold bowl. Then, when it's baked, break a piece off the edge and turn it sideways to the light. Count the layers. That's the entire rule, in 1 crust, and you didn't buy a thing. The next video is rendering your own lard at home from 1 cut of pork fat. The leaf lard I talked about, what it costs to make, and what it sells for, which are 2 numbers that will bother you. If you want to be here when it goes up, subscribe. And tell me this in the comments. What does your crust actually do wrong? Does it shrink down the sides of the pan? Does it come out tough? Or does it fall apart before you can get it in the dish? Those are 3 different failures with 3 different causes, and I read every one of them. Don't let the lard get soft. She never measured a temperature in her life. 100 years of food science later, nobody has improved on those 6 words.